Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoltmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Active Turnkey podcast. I'm your host, Jared Stoltmeister, and it is again just me. And we do not have Tom Olson with us today. And so today's podcast will probably be a shorter one. When Tom and I get together, we do tend to put our comments in there, and we do feed off each other quite a bit. But today's podcast should be a pretty quick one, I would imagine. And we're continuing our series on what we say is the Active Turnkey series. We call BRRRR, when you buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, we call that Active Turnkey. And Tom coined that a long time ago. And when you buy turnkey from us, it's stress-free. You have a property that's done, and our standard is typically you're buying a property that has a tenant in place at time of closing. And so it's not risk-free, but it can be a little bit of stress-free in many ways, as long as everything works according to plan. And but Active Turnkey is not that way. I mean, you're going to be involved. You're going to have some things you're going to have to do, and you're going to be some involvement, and it's going to take some work, and we do a lot of that stuff for you. But there's definitely some activity there, especially on the back end when you're working with your lender, trying to get the thing refinanced and so on. And but this is now our fifth episode on the Active Turnkey series. And just recapping the series so far, the first one we talked about establishing ARV. I won't go into too much detail here, but we need to make sure of every number, any number on that on your pro forma. It's the after repair value. Everything starts with that. The sale price, after repair value, whatever you want to call it. What is that thing worth when I'm all done with it? And that's going to establish the whole deal. My estimating or establishing that ARV. Then next we want to determine the rent. And again, it's a wide range, and you don't have to do it the way the Olson Group does it. But one thing that really helps Olson Group, or one group here, is that we know what our product looks like, and so we know what we can estimate it. Like we just know in the end, like what it's going to look like and the desirability, and then we should be able to determine that rent pretty soundly. And so establishing your ARV, determining your rent. We talked about estimating repairs. That was number 3, estimating repairs. And this whole series up to this point has been at your computer, at your desk. We call this like a desk assessment. You are just running the numbers as you're just making that work. ARV, determining rent, in this case, estimating repairs. What's it going to cost for me to get the property to the point where I believe I can have an ARV of this and a rent of this? And you want to make sure you have that number down. So you're estimating repairs. What is it? And then the last episode, we talked about running your numbers. Just run the numbers. What are they? And what goes into the pro forma and all the different numbers you don't want to miss that are on the pro forma, and you're taking into account. Sometimes it happens, especially if you're doing things on the fly, you're doing things on paper, whether that be running your numbers or estimating repairs, you just may forget a number. And sometimes, depending on that line item, that could be a big one. And so you want to incorporate all that. When you're running your numbers, make sure you have every detail there, and take some time and create a template of some kind, whether it be a spreadsheet or you have your own sheet of paper that you fill out, but take the time and generate a template to where you can know for sure you're not missing any details. You can update your template as you go, as there's things you want to add, but run your numbers. Make sure you're getting the returns you want that are for you. Everybody is going to tell you what they want. And then be okay with what that means. If you say I want to have $400 cash flow, okay, well that's your standard. That's what you want, and that's what you're going to get. Great. Realize that whatever your own criteria is could give you lots of opportunities or give you very little opportunities, depending on what you want. But run your numbers, figure out what that is. And so that was on episode 4. And that concluded the first part. We kind of called it the desk assessment. We do all of that before we even go to the property. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your gas or power. If you have a smart, electric car, you have your Tesla. Don't waste your power. Going to the property. If you haven't done all that, you may get to the property again. We had it happen recently where I just mentioned a guy was at the door and I said, "Hey, did you run the numbers? Did you run the numbers yet? Is it even worth going out?" And Tom has beat that to a drum with our team. And many times we're going to properties and we probably should have never gone to them. And what that does is it takes time away from other things. And so some of you may be trying to find your own deals and you're thinking it's so hard, but you may be spending too much time in a specific area going and looking at a bunch of properties when really you should have never gone to that property at all. Maybe you need to spend a little more time up front at your desk doing your desk assessment, finding out, and you can kind of weed out those deals. And you're like, I'm not going to get that return I'm looking for. I don't like the block, or hey, I don't like the neighborhood. This is kind of scary. Weed those out, or you might be able to establish, okay, because of this, now I know I can do all these things. So anyway, at this point, we're going to transition into the next section, which is the property assessment. So you have established, you've gone through those first 4 main steps, and then we could do a whole lot more. And there's some smart people who could say that we're missing some things, and they're probably right. But these are just some general areas that you can go through. And the first 4 were your desk assessment. This next time, we've established that this property is a prospect. We think that this is an opportunity for a deal. We've gone through all this. We believe it's worth the time to go to the property and check it out. And so in this case, this episode, we're calling it Curb Appeal. Curb Appeal. It's very, very unique and edgy title. I think you guys are really it's gonna catch on for sure. And going on a limb there. No, but Curb Appeal, it's real. It matters. And so there are some investors, they don't care about that. And in many ways, I could make the argument that some investors maybe care too much. They may go overboard, and that's definitely something that to pay attention to. But again, you need to remember that if you're trying to do a rental property, you're buying, and this could go for turnkey or active turnkey, whatever method you have to having a rental property, someone's going to live there. Someone's going to stay overnight, and you got to remember that factor. And there's 2 different types of investors. Sometimes I have investors who will say, I would never want to have a rental property where I wouldn't live there. And I understand what they're trying to say. I understand they're trying to be thoughtful and be proud of what they own. But I always counter that by saying, okay, you mean to tell me that you would move up to Northwest Indiana? You're a dentist or you're a doctor, you're an attorney in California. You're telling me you want to have a house that you'd be willing to move. So would you move to Indiana anyway? Are you going to move here? No, you're not investing because you would live here, first of all. And you're never going to live here. And here's what you're going to miss. You're going to miss the opportunity that although you may never live in that house, somebody will. And so you're going to help somebody. You're going to help that person. Not only will they live there, but they'd love to. If you make it gorgeous, they would love to live there. And so you're helping that person, you're helping the community, you're helping being part of the culture change that Tom is trying to have in Gary, Indiana, make it a place that people want to live, move to again. And when you make a house beautiful, people want to live there. And so there's that side of the person where they may say, I would never want to buy a property where I wouldn't live. Then you have somebody who's the opposite, where it's like, I'll never live there. Who cares? And so, and of course, that's horrible too. You have to remember someone is going to live there, and you're the owner, and you have control over what kind of person's going to be there. Do they want to be there? Do they want to live there? And if you're not providing that, you're feeding the negativity. You're feeding your loss. You're gonna hurt yourself in the long run. So you want to make your house the type of place that people want to live. And that does matter. And even though you may never do that, and again, I have many rental properties now, or I say a few properties, forgive me, but at this point, I would probably not live in most of them. But I think they're great houses. And so, plus I live in my dream home. Okay. I love where I live. Why would I go somewhere else? Okay. But you guys are with me. But curb appeal. Now, I've kind of broken this up in just basic stuff. In fact, I'm probably not going to say anything that either we haven't said before in another podcast that you haven't read somewhere else. So some of you may be like turning off your radios and as if you guys had a little button there. But no. But if you just listen to this, may be a reminder. Maybe I'll say something new. But first of all, what was the drive like getting to the property? Okay, some of you may be taking the highway. You may be going through this way. Maybe you know the block very well. But what was the drive like? Okay. And remember that when you put that sign in the yard, someone's going to drive there. What was the drive like? Was it good? I remember recently I went to a property and in fact I was hosting somebody and we were driving around, looking at different areas and we had to, if I remember correctly, I was hosting and we had to drop them off. Somebody had an appointment they needed to go to, and so I dropped them off and the route I took back, I came back the other way. Okay, the initial ride was nice. Going back around the other direction, coming from the other side, I was amazed at how ugly that drive was. And so thinking about it, how are these people going to get to your home, to this house they're gonna want to rent to? And so depending on which way they come in, could determine what they're who's gonna rent this property. And so as an owner, beware. Like, how did I get here? What was the drive like? What did the people have to drive through? And so just pay attention to that. What's it like? Because again, prospective tenants, good ones that you want to live in your home, are going to make that same drive. And are they going to enjoy the ride? Is it going to be okay? Is it going to be normal? Are they going to be scared for their life? Those are all things you want to pay attention to because they're going to make that same drive themselves. So the second thing is, so you made the drive, you're paying attention, you're looking around, what's going on in my area, and then you get to the street. You get to the street, and particularly the block. And so you wanna drive up there, maybe even drive the whole street, maybe drive around the block or something. That's great too. But once you get out of the car, take a look. What's going on your block? I know that seems obvious. It's just obvious. But when you're deal hungry, you may not care as much. You may not pay attention as much. You may be focused on the property, and you may be focused on the upfront stuff, ARVs and rents and repair estimates, all that stuff. So pay attention to the block. What does the block look like? Are the yards kept? It's amazing in Gary how many beautiful neighborhoods and beautiful blocks, and the next block over, it's as if there's condemned houses and there's people who have dumped property in their front yard. You had 4 vehicles in the front. I mean, it's amazing from block to block how that can change, and how from one block to the other, you have these people and they love their yards, they manicure it. You see out there mowing and weeding and doing the things that you'd love to see your tenants do. And what does the block look like? You're going to want to pay attention to that. Is it well kept? Are there vacants? Is your property the only vacant property on the block? Or are there many? Okay, it's one thing to have one or two, especially in areas that we're working in. We're looking to change Gary, so we're in D+ to C areas. It's very common to find multiple vacants or to have 1 or 2 vacants. Are there 5? Recently, we've had a property that we sold and reacquired, and recently, and at the time when we had the first time, there were like 5 or 6 vacants on that block. Now they're actually rehabbing 3 houses across the street, 3 houses, a different company, and that's going to change the whole block. Now, I mean, there were 4 vacants on the block. Now there's going to be 0. It's a huge change to that block. And so it's exciting to see that get dumped in there, the money pouring into that property. And so pay attention to what's going on the block. Are there other vacants? Are there burnouts? Okay, it's one thing to have some vacant properties, maybe some board ups, but it's a whole other thing to have burnouts. I mean, that house is almost never, ever going to be purchased and rehabbed. I mean, it's got to be in okay shape for some investor to see the value in buying that house and rehabbing it. Now, I've owned properties that have been next to a burnout or next to a house that's we've sold properties that have been that way. But are there many? Is it next door? These are all things you want to know going into that. And so when you pull up, look at the block, find out what's going on. Are they kept? Are there lots of vacants? Are there 1 or 2? And yours is one of them. And so you're going to help improve the neighborhood, and people are going to be happy that you did it, and the neighbors are going to be happy that you fixed up your house. Are there burnouts? Is your burnout next door? And things like that. So pay attention to what's happening. This is all part of curb appeal. And remember, although you're looking at it as a deal, in many cases we can be very calloused and we can be very detached in our focus on building portfolios. And we fail to remember that at some point we're planting a sign in the yard that says for rent, and somebody's gonna go to that property and they're going to make that drive and they're going to drive down that block and they're going to see those houses. And even though your house may be awesome, it may be gorgeous, it's next door to that, or it's across the street from that, or and again, these are in some parts of Gary, that's just part of the change that we're making, but you need to be aware of what those are, and you need to make sure that you're okay with that. And those are things, and why, as from one group, for us, we try to recommend, if you're looking to invest, this is the first time you listen to our podcast, we build rental portfolios for investors. And we usually help people by buying selling turnkey product where it's done for you, tenant in place, time of closing, paying free in many ways, or active turnkey where it's the best way to buy rentals. However that is, I often tell people on a sales call, I told someone this week on a sales call, that from a sales perspective, I know that buyer typically who sets appointment with me wants to buy rental properties. They want to invest. They want to build a portfolio. And so typically a salesman understands that, and they can prey on that. We can, and in the end, I can tell you exactly what you want to hear. I can say exactly what you want to hear. If you have any kind of skill at all, you can do that. And so in the end, there are many times where there's a newer investor who knows they want to do it. They have a family member who's doing it. They've read Bigger Pockets. They say they understand how real estate's great. They can't wait to get started. And at that point, you could sell them anything. And so I often tell them, let's hold on, let's back up, okay? And I tell them, whether you buy from me or from one group or another turnkey provider, whoever it is, go and visit their operation. Meet them in person. Okay, find out if you want to have a long-term relationship with this person, and then find out from that, are the projects as they describe them to be, and then lastly, what is the area like? I always try to say that. Don't take my word for how awesome we are, okay? Go and see for yourself and verify. And that's the last one. If you're talking about Gary, that's a big hurdle to get over. What is Gary like? What does that mean? What does the letter grade mean when we're trying to grade these areas, these blocks? So go and visit the property, visit the area. And that's what I recommend. Hey, don't take my word for it. You come and visit, and I'll show you where we're investing. And I'll show you that, we're not next door to the burnouts typically. We're not in the war zones. We're not on brutal blocks where your house is the only occupied house. It's the only one worth living in on the block. Those are things you're going to want to verify. And those are things you want to know as an investor, what is happening on your block, yards, cap vacants, burnouts, all those different things you want to check. The other thing you want to do is what is going on next door? What is going on next door? So one of my rentals I purchased, I remember I got there and it was a lead from another seller in the community. And I couldn't find pictures on Google at all. I couldn't find pictures. Typically, you want to go and find something. There wasn't anything. There was nothing online. And in fact, when I typed in the address, it showed me a picture of the house, of what I thought was the house. And so when I got to the property, I pulled up and I was just like, oh man, I don't know. I don't really like this very much. I wasn't feeling it. And couldn't find out that wasn't the house. It was actually the house next door. And so where I was like, okay, this is much better. But that feel you have, like what's going on in these houses next door? Because again, like it or not, you plant a sign in the yard, those people are going to live next door to that house. And, as an investor, I said moments ago that, we would never want to live in a house that I wouldn't want to live in. Well, remember that those people are going to live there and they are going to have someone next door. And you can't, they're signing a lease and you don't want them to move out because of whatever reason that is. And so don't give them a reason to move out. Pay attention, be aware, and don't be surprised if you did move into a house where you're on either side of you are vacant burnouts, and then be surprised that these people that are going to the property aren't very happy, or they aren't the type of tenants you want them to be. And so what's going on next door? What's going on across the street? And these are the people they're going to be dealing with. Is there a crazy dog next door? I mean, this happens a lot. Is there a massive dog that when you walk out, it's at the fence and the fence is teetering on you? Okay, it's teetering. We had a tenant one time where next door there was a massive, like a Great Dane dog, and this fence was like, it looked as if it was just there, and he just didn't care to jump over because he could have. It was just teetering, and so. Hey, that's going to matter. That massive dog is barking at every single person. It's scary, and they have children. Okay, well, you might not have a tenant. So pay attention to something like that. Be aware of what's going on with your neighbors and the blocks. And sometimes you may find out that the neighbors are good. They're kind. They're good people, and they keep their yards nice. And so, pay attention to that. Pay attention to what's going on behind you, in front of you, across the street, and on both sides, and see what's going on. Do they take care of their yards, or is it a disaster? We had a property recently where apparently after we sold the property, someone came in, bought a house next door, and now they just dump trash everywhere. Like it's disgusting. It's awful. It's embarrassing for the city of Gary to have that property, and there's an investor who owns a house next door, and it's you can call in the city, but again, that person's got to live there next door, and when they move out and you're going to get a new tenant in, there might be a difficult time getting somebody in that property knowing that they have a dump next door. So these are all things you want to pay attention to: is what does the house next door look like, and then lastly, your house. Okay. This is all curb appeal. These are all things you want to pay attention to, and I could see someone say, okay, you're taking a little overboard, but you should be doing this. You should be paying attention to this, these different things, and because again, you're going to have someone in that property. So, what is the house? Describe it right away. You pull up. What do you think of the property? What does it look like? Is it cute? Is it quaint? Is it nice? Is it Is it blah? Do you hate it? We had a deal recently that came across the desk, and it was in Hammond, so a nice town in our area that used to be a C plus. Now I could argue that most of Hammond's a B to B minus neighborhood. Property values have gone up, and you see a deal come across your desk where when you're doing the upfront desk assessment, and you see the ARVs low and the sale price low, you're like, I wonder what's going on there. So you investigate more, and then, there's the picture. You see it, and the curb appeal is horrific. It's awful. They've added onto the property in every which way, and with like a lean-to, and definitely not permitted. I mean, different things like that. And you take a look at it, and it's awful. And right away, you're gonna limit who's gonna want to live there. Because again, when you're doing everything up front, you want to have a house where people want to live. If you want to have a good quality tenant who pays their rent, part of that has to do with having a house that meets that tenant, that high standard that they might have for you. And so that curb appeal, describe it to yourself. What does this look like? Is it okay? That's fine. And sometimes a little bit of dressing things up could help. But do you have to like almost build a new house now because this house is so ugly from the street? Pay attention to that. Do you like it? Do you like the house? It's good. You have to love it, but do you like it? Is it good? I mean, it goes a long way, because if you like it from the street, from the curb appeal, just from driving up before you go in, they might as well. Is the build ugly? Is the build ugly? I kind of alluded to it earlier, but is the build ugly? Is it just a blah build? Sometimes you might get the cedar shake siding. Sometimes you might get like a log cabin build. You might get just all over the board. And then how is it situated on the lot? Sometimes you go up to a property and it's a funky layout, or the property is long ways on the lot, and you have to drive up to it, and the front door is on the side of the house, and your side door is facing the side of your front door is facing the side of a house. It's a strange it's a strange layout for somebody. Maybe the house is right on top of the street, or maybe it's all the way back at the end, and so basically your front yard's looking at their backyard, and you guys are just kind of waving at each other, and you don't have any backyard. Sometimes corner lots, the way they're situated, the house on the corner lot will have no backyard. Like their backyard is 6 feet wide. These are all things you're going to want to pay attention to. How is that property situated? And this is one of Tom's. If you listen to Tom, he's mentioned many times. How is it situated? Is it funky? Is it funky? Other obsolescences around the block. You want to pay attention as a keyword for obsolescences. Is there we had one situation where we had a property and we're like, man, this looks really interesting. This deal looks great. This house looks gorgeous. Look at the pictures. Man, why isn't this house selling? You find out, there is a packing company next door, like literally next door. And there's trucks and bright lights and loud noises and high fences and overgrowth and all these different things. Like, okay, that makes sense. These are all things you just have to pay attention to and know and be able to account for that. And because that could affect value. So that definitely could affect value. Is the house located on a busy street? Is it accessible? With it being a busy street, how difficult is it to get in and out? That could be an issue for a tenant. That could be very annoying, and that certainly affects value. Typically speaking, houses on busy streets don't have as much value as those off of those busy streets. And generally speaking, you will see that the values go up as you go farther away from the busy roads. Especially in the communities that we're working in, where you see the D plus to C areas that we're going D plus to C plus. And so where are these houses located? Where we had a situation where, is the house next door to a bar? Okay. Some people may think that's cool, but that could be an issue for tenants, as you got a bunch of people who are inebriated walking down the street. You got kids and Saturday nights and Sunday nights. Maybe you can't go. Friday nights you can't go sit in your backyard because these guys are staring at you as they're drinking. As they're or whatever, you got bars or you got general stores, gas stations with bright lights shining. All these are all different scenarios, and they're all okay. There's nothing wrong with having properties like that. I would own one and own ones like that. Is it on an alley? That's another thing. And I have a few properties that are on an alley. Just know that there's gonna be people driving right past the fences or the yards. These are all things to pay attention to, and they may seem to not be much, but you have to know who's going to live there and why. And again, looking through all this, I can understand someone saying, okay, that's just going overboard. I think it's going overboard. But this is all part of knowing your property, knowing what that tenant's going to expect, what that prospective tenant's going to expect when they come up. And are they going to be happy with what they see? Are they going to think it's cute, adorable? Especially after you're done with your rehab, is it going to be, oh, it's so adorable? Or are they going to be like, oh, man, the inside looks awesome. The pictures look great, but man, that it's just ugly. The house, the build, the layout, the block, the neighbors, the way to get here. That block's nice, but boy, the trip getting here, I feel like I can't drive at night. Heaven forbid I get a flat tire. These are all things you want to pay attention to, be aware of them, and as you're building your portfolio, pay attention. So again, today's podcast was on curb appeal. Step number 5, verify all that and make sure. And if you meet it, grade it. And then from there, next couple podcasts we'll get into, as we go into the properties, what's the inside layout. So we talked a moment ago about the outside layout. We'll talk about the inside layout and how that affects value and appeal to the tenants, as well as estimates and things like that, as far when it comes to the property itself. And so today, I hope this brought you value. And if it did, I hope you give us a thumbs up, a like, a share, and so on. And we do appreciate 5 stars as well. And so hope this brought value. Remember, we do build rental portfolios for investors, as I mentioned a moment ago. And so if you're looking to get started, you can reach me. You can go to our website, buyolsongroup.com. You can join the buyers list there. And don't be shy. If you go on the website, you sign up, don't be shy. Reach out. And there is a link there that you can set a time to talk with me, and we can discuss what's important to you, what are you trying to accomplish. And some people start brand new, and that's great. And we have a lot of people who can do that, and we can help you with that. Or if you're a seasoned investor and you're looking for a second market to invest in, we've helped many investors do that as well. So we do believe that active turnkey is the best way to buy. So we have two products typically. We have the turnkey model done for you, tenant can move in, and as I mentioned before as well, we have active turnkey products or BRRRR, and we help bring the deal to you and help you with the whole process. And we do have an in-house property management company as well, and so we can help you from start to finish, A to Z, and bumper to bumper as we get to build your portfolio to where you'd like it to be. And so thank you for joining us again, Active Turnkey, the best way to buy rentals. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.